Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat datang and a warm welcome to the Malaysia Scholars on Korea program titled Solidarity Amid Disruptions. To begin this morning's session, we are pleased to invite His Excellency Yeo Sung-bae, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Malaysia, to deliver the welcoming remarks.
Dr. Mohamed Faiz Abdullah, Chairman of ISIS Malaysia, distinguished MASK network members, ladies and gentlemen, selamat pagi, salam sejahtera. It is my great pleasure to open this year's MASK network seminar. Let me first express my thanks to MASK network members for being here with us today. Your active and constructive engagement in the embassy's activities has always contributed to strengthening ties between Korea and Malaysia. And I also like to extend my sincere welcome to all esteemed speakers and panelists of today, especially Dr. Lee Jae-in from Asean Institute and Dr. Kim Young-jong from Yonsei University came all the way from Korea to share their knowledge and insight with us today. We also have a special guest from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Korea, Deputy Director General for ASEAN and Southeast Asian Affairs, Mr. Lee Dong-gi. He will deliver an online presentation on Korea's ASEAN policy and Korea-Malaysia relations for the upcoming years. Ladies and gentlemen, today, the world is facing complex and multi-layered security and economic crisis. Some people call it polycrisis, including wars and supply chain disruptions and climate disasters. These challenges cannot be addressed by any single country alone. Strong solidarity and close cooperation among countries are essential to navigate through these challenges and disruptions. Under the circumstances, Korea and Malaysia have been working hard to make the best use of this year's 40th anniversary of Look East policy to strengthen our bilateral ties. In this regard, I am proud, I'm happy to say, we have made remarkable headway this year. And let me share with you three most noteworthy points. Number one, the invigorated high-level exchanges towards the upgrade of our bilateral relations. In early September, at the sidelines of ASEAN Summit in Indonesia, President Yoon Suk-yeol and Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim held the first summit after the inauguration of new governments of both countries. This is also the first leaders meeting, face-to-face meeting in 4 years. 1 week later, Speaker of Korea's National Assembly, who is number 2 in our official protocol precedence, paid a visit to Malaysia and engaged in discussions with top Malaysian politicians. And Korean Prime Minister also had a meeting with Speaker Johari in Hangzhou. In addition, a total of 7 ministers from both countries visited each other. So it is the highest number of ministerial level exchanges over the past several years. Most recently, last month, our foreign ministers had a second meeting in San Francisco. Currently, we have started to discuss possible high-level visit, very high-level visit for next year. These active high-level engagements clearly demonstrate how deeply and how closely Korea and Malaysia are working together to bolster our solidarity and cooperation. Building upon these active exchanges and collaborations, the two countries now seek to elevate our bilateral relations to strategic partnership. With the strategic partnership, we are expected to have more communication, more cooperation, both at the bilateral level and also on regional peace and security. Our defense and security cooperation will become even closer. This September, we had the first joint naval exercise in East Coast near Kwantan Port. We also organized the first defense industry cooperation seminar together with MINDEF. Our defense industry cooperation will continue in a mutually beneficial manner. The signing of the final contract of FA-50, the light combat aircraft, is a good start. Second is enhanced public awareness of the Korea-Malaysia relationship. This year, our embassy has organized approximately 20 public events to foster people's understanding of the evolving partnership between our two countries, starting with the opening ceremony of 40th LEP anniversary in March with MITI. A series of commemorative events were held throughout the year, which include Korean Wave Exhibition, Korean National Archive Exhibition, Korea Film Festival, a video contest, K-drama OST concert, Korea Alumni Dinner, and state-level cultural and economic events. These various events enable many people to deepen their understanding of the vibrant and long-standing relationship Korea and Malaysia are enjoying now. In addition, the opening of the consulate office in Kota Kinabalu, Sabah this September will further promote active people-to-people and cultural exchange along with more economic cooperation. Third is a significant progress in our economic cooperation in both qualitative and quantitative dimensions. Currently, Korea stands as Malaysia's 8th largest trading partner, we exceeding $20 billion mark in trade volume 3 years in a row, and 7th largest foreign investor. The number of Korean companies operating in Malaysia has jumped from 320 to 420 over the last 2 years. Future-oriented collaboration is also gaining traction for our shared benefits. Now, high-tech and eco-friendly sectors such as hydrogen, CCS, green energy, batteries, semiconductors have become new areas of collaboration between our two countries. At the government level, the first Korea-Malaysia climate change dialogue was launched in October. It was Malaysia's first ever high-level bilateral dialogue with non-ASEAN country on climate issues. At the embassy level, we have hosted more than 10 business events, not only in KL, but also other states this year to facilitate business cooperation and help explore new investment opportunities. I believe these activities toward our common objectives, such as green energy transition, technological advancement, and climate change responses, will form the very foundation of our future-oriented partnership. Through such collaboration, Korea seeks to be a reliable partner for Malaysia in achieving its goal of becoming top 30 global economy through Madani economy. Lastly, on North Korea. North Korea's nuclear and missile program continued to pose a serious threat not only to Koreans, but also to the region, including ASEAN. This year, North Korea has launched more than 30 ballistic missiles and ICBMs. Needless to say, any kind of launch using ballistic missile technology is a violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. The recent military cooperation between North Korea and Russia has also raised concerns. As you know, in September, the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited Russia and had an extensive discussion on military cooperation with his Russian counterpart. 2 months after, North Korea conducted the second attempt of spy satellite launching. Korea will always respond resolutely to any unlawful provocation by North Korea, maintaining strong defense and deterrence capability. But at the same time, we are always open to inter-Korean dialogue to discuss the elevation of tensions on the peninsula and also ways to make Korean Peninsula denuclearized, peaceful and prosperous place. Malaysia has always been a strong supporter, strong advocate for our efforts to achieve complete denuclearization of North Korea. When North Korea launched ICBMs in February and July, the government of Malaysia issued a strong statement condemning North Korea and urging Pyongyang to cease its nuclear and missile programs. These messages are exactly what we have to send in order to demonstrate our united will to denuclearize North Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, in fact, today's seminar is the very last one of a number of events our embassy has prepared this year. That is why I feel obligated to brief you somewhat lengthy all the major developments and achievements we have done this year. I hope this will help generate productive discussion today. Last but not least, I am pleased that we have new onboarding members of MASK network today. I welcome all those new members and once again thank Chairman and also all MASK members for your continued support for Korea. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Ambassador Yeo. Moving on with this morning's program, we wish to invite Professor Dr. Muhammad Faiz Abdullah, Chairman of ISIS Malaysia, to deliver his opening address.
Thank you, Paulina. Ambassador Yeo, my good friend, His Excellency from the Republic of Korea Embassy in Malaysia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, some very familiar faces, colleagues. Let me again say welcome to the Solidarity Amid Disruptions program held here in the very halls, the very auditorium of ISIS Malaysia. Thanks to an MOU signed between ISIS Malaysia and the ROK Embassy back in 2017, yes, the MAS network was formed. This is a network, of course, of academicians, teachers, think tankers, and anybody else who's just interested in what's going on around the world. Perhaps before I begin my formal speech, I just want to underscore and state my concurrence with the particular aspects raised by Ambassador Yeo on the significance of the upgrading of our bilateral relations in terms of the strategic partnership. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that such an upgrade is of key importance in many areas, some of which I will be elaborating later. Perhaps in this day and age, nothing would shape this course on a nation's economic, political, and strategic future more than the issues of competition and disruptions. Speaking of disruptions, I don't mind sharing that I've just returned from COP28 in Dubai, where discussions attempted to find the coordinated actions to limit long-term global temperature rising by 1.5 degrees Celsius. Rising sea levels, heavy floods, urban heat island effect, and biodiversity loss. This is the rogues gallery of climate change, and it's getting from bad to worse. And the consequences are far-reaching. incurring significant economic losses. Case in point, over the last 50 years, Asia alone has accounted for half of the world's economic losses from natural disasters, amounting to more than US $1.3 trillion. Hence, to forge greater resilience and solidarity in the face of crises, we need better coordination and more capacity building, among other things. But of course, nature is not to blame for everything. The Ukraine-Russia conflict, for instance, has impacted energy costs, turned supply chain on its head, and unleashed market instability and price volatility, while GDP growth forecasts were thrown out the window, dragging down the region's recovery. Amidst this crisis, the competition for ideology and influence would permeate in other parts of engagements, making it even more difficult to achieve consensus and solidarity. As for major power competition, states may choose to entrench power positions, whether in economy, global governance, or the military. You may call it friendshoring, de-risking, decoupling, or self-reliance policies. But at the end of the day, these are effectively disguised protectionist measures in the quest for economic dominance. Calling them quote-unquote development pathways won't change the fact that unbridled competition leads to intense rivalries which could spill into the security or military domains. I note Ambassador Yeo's remarks with regard to the military maneuvers of North Korea. I think we all share the same concern. Now, we are already seeing this unfolding in other areas, such as, for example, the semiconductors sector. What is the moral? The moral is that when two powers are fixated on primacy, chances are the outcome could lean more on calamity, misfortune, rather than fortune. This may not be cast in stone, but we know that according to Thucydides' trap, when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling power, the consequence is clash. It may not be necessarily violent, or it may be violent, but either way, it is a clash. In this vein, the intense rivalry today among the major powers is the bitter child of time. The upshot of the 2008 financial crisis, for example, is the rise of the emerging economies, where, lo and behold, 15 years later, today, the battle lines are drawn. One pole accuses the other of displaying ambitions for international economic governance. The other pole retorts that the table is big enough for others to take their seats. So why moan and groan? Global entities such as the WTO and the UN are fundamentally shackled and rendered impotent to mount any effective check and balance. Thus, the quote-unquote world order based on predictable systems becomes destabilized as structures formed on so-called international rules buckle under the weight of skepticism and cynicism. Meanwhile, as power shifts, the hegemon, no names need to be said here, would aim to reassert and maintain dominance, specifically in the economic, technological, as well as the military domains. From our standpoint, both are indispensable partners for the region. And it's a fool's errand to engage, let alone rejoice in disruptive behavior, which serves only to promote protectionism, sow distrust between nations, and segregate communities. Worse still, expanded militarization and misunderstanding and animosity are surefire formula for the disruption of our trajectory to progress. The arena of conflict is certainly not confined to two big poles or two major players, as countries choose specific alliances to advance their various domestic agenda. To navigate the power rivalry, They may craft their own Indo-Pacific strategy, for example, where some may have more containment elements than others. Solidarity could also mean alignments that build accords while sequestering other players. In this regard, it is noteworthy that the South Korea Indo-Pacific strategy and the Asean outlook on the Indo-Pacific underscore the imperative of, and I would underline, inclusivity rather than exclusivity. In an environment slouching more towards ideological divisiveness rather than concordance, we need to see more of this. That is solidarity amid disruptions. Current circumstances make it rife for the participation of small and medium powers to shape international environments. Amid the circumstances propelling the rise of China, for example, is the emergence of developing economies in global governance. Again, the numbers don't lie. Emerging economies accounted for almost 2/3 of the world's GDP growth, and the swift recovery from the pandemic has demonstrated their resilience. On the strength of global forecasts, emerging markets will grow by more than twice the speed of developed markets in 2023 alone. This is subject to final verification, of course. Asia alone will add $22 trillion in new wealth between 2020 and 25. The growth opens spaces for small and middle powers to shape the global order while influencing international outcomes. The Republic of Korea and Malaysia can play a role to build the environment for common prosperity. To my mind, ROK and naturally the ambition to be a global pivotal state, along with Malaysia's interests of ensuring regional and international stability, this could find solidarity amid disruptions. Yet, perhaps the first step to realizing shared goals is to identify strategic commonalities and to minimize the differences. Here, we could look forward to the first session today that will discuss potential sectors of common views, inclusive of the Korean ASEAN Solidarity Initiative that could ensure stability in a disruptive world. Let me also underscore again the significance of the upgrade of relations between Malaysia and the Republic of Korea to the strategic partnership status. But truth be told, common goals may be difficult to construct for two nations who may know each other, let's just say, just slightly beneath the surface. People-to-people exchanges, without a doubt, are the very anchor of resilient relationships. They reap rewards for closer diplomatic relations, greater economic engagements, and shared strategic point of views. This is so needed to ground solidarity and future disruptions. Such soft power influence tied to positive outlooks has to penetrate beyond the glitz and glamour of K-pop or headlines in the news. Well, now having said that, don't get me wrong, BTS, Blackpink, Twice, and so on. These are great agents of soft power too. And please don't report what I said about the glitz and glamour to my daughters. Yeah, they'll probably kill me when I get back. Now, there are also positive directions. In 2019, the joint number of tourists between Malaysia and Korea and vice versa exceeded 1 million for the first time. Further, it is estimated there are 15,000 Koreans and 5,000 Malaysians who live and work in Malaysia and Korea, respectively. Unfortunately, the 2022 ASEAN Korea Center survey finds people-to-people awareness, especially among Korean youth on Malaysia, that remains low, with knowledge of neighbors such as Thailand even higher. Thus, the second panel exploring ways to enhance such ties is imperative to lay the foundation blocks of resilient Malaysia-ROK relations today and the many, many years to come in the future. On that note, I look forward to the outcome of the panels today, and I wish everyone a good seminar and very fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Faiz. That concludes the opening ceremony. The program will be taking a short break. The next session will commence at 10:30. I would like to invite His Excellency Yosumbe, Professor Dr. Muhammad Faiz, role players and MASK members for a photo session. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to take your seats. The next session will begin.
Good morning, everyone. The first session today is titled South Korea as a Global Pivotal State, Building Solidarity with Southeast Asia. You all have your program books. The sessions are described there, but essentially what we're trying to do in this session is to unpack how South Korea assesses its priorities in an evolving geostrategic environment, what are the international and domestic considerations, are there room for convergences in the strategic priorities between Malaysia and South Korea? And what are the areas of collaboration between Malaysia, Southeast Asia, and the ROK under CASI? And to do that today, we have two speakers. Mr. Lee Dong-ri, the Deputy Director General of the ASEAN Bureau of MOFA Korea. He will be speaking to us online. We have Dr. Lee Jae-hon, a familiar face and a senior fellow with the Center for Regional Studies. And we have three discussants, Dr. Nurulena Kamaruddin from the AEI of Dr. Roy Anthony Rogers, also from AEI at and Iza Ibrahim from ISIS Malaysia. So this session will run till 12:05. The way it's going to go is I will invite DDG Lee to speak first for about 10 minutes, and then Dr. Lee Jae-hon for 10 minutes, and then our discussants will come in for 5 minutes each. So to get the ball started, Deputy Director General Lee, the floor is yours, sir. I hope that the connection is stable. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good morning. Salamat pagi. His Excellency Ambassador Yosumbe, Professor Dr. Mohammed Faiz Abdullah, distinguished guests from academia. I would like to thank the Institute of Strategic and International Studies for inviting me to this year's MASK conference. First of all, I will touch upon our two countries' multi-level partnership. Looking for further areas of cooperation. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. For further areas of cooperation, and then move on to possible way to collaborate in the context of Korea-ASEAN Solidarity Initiative, as we call CASI, after briefly explaining about the CASI. Finally, I will explore some areas we can work together after upgrading the ROK and ASEAN relation to the new level, comprehensive strategic partnership in 2024. Korea and Malaysia since 1960 have cultivated very strong ties of friendship and cooperation in various areas, including politics, economy, culture, and people-to-people exchanges. This year, we have seen comprehensive and notable progress in our bilateral relations, commemorating the 40th anniversary of the Look East policy. Our two countries' friendship will further deepen in the upcoming year, including elevation of our bilateral relations into a strategic partnership, as noted by Chairman Dr. Mohammed Faiz Abdullah. For one thing, Malaysia, founding member of ASEAN, is a key partner of the CASI, as well as Maritime Southeast Asian partner in the ROK and BIMPIAGA cooperation. As you know, President Yoon launched the CASI at the 23rd ASEAN ROK Summit meeting in 2022. The CASI is the first regional policy under the ROK's Indo-Pacific strategy. It has inherited all the achievements made in the previous governments. This is a steadfast and unwavering demonstration of Korea's foreign policy, ASEAN's prominence. Next slide. To ensure CASI is action-oriented, we identify 8 core lines of efforts based on ASEAN's key strategies, goals, and policy areas of cooperation outlined in the various documents. Also, the 8 core lines of efforts are aligned with the 3 visions of ROK's Indo-Pacific strategy: freedom, peace, and prosperity. The first 2 lines are about upgrading partnership with ASEAN, strengthening bilateral relations with the ASEAN member states, and enhancing cooperation within ASEAN-led mechanisms.
I'm so sorry to intervene, but I think your slides are not moving, and I think the control of the slides are from your end. It's still stuck on the first page, ROK, Malaysia, where do our visions converge?
Oh, okay. Sorry for that. I'm not the technique savvy, but I think you can see the slide right now, right?
We can see, but it's stuck on the first page, your opening page. I think you've moved on from that. Paulina, is there any way we can control the slides from here?
Sure.
Okay, it's moving now. We got it.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I'm starting again about the 8 core lines of efforts, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the confusion. To ensure CASI is action-oriented, we identified 8 core lines of efforts based on ASEAN's key strategies, goals, and priority areas of cooperation outlined in the various documents. Also, 8 core lines of efforts are aligned with 3 visions of Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy: freedom, peace, and prosperity. The first 2 lines are about upgrading partnership with ASEAN, strengthening bilateral relations with the AMS, and enhancing cooperation with ASEAN-led mechanisms. Next 2 lines of efforts linked to peace vision are focused on enhancing security and strategic cooperation. Next 3 under prosperity are about shared and greater prosperity. The ROK will expand cooperation in future and emerging areas, including transboundary challenges and people-to-people exchange. Let me briefly touch upon the Malaysia's development strategy. Later speakers will know better, and I'm afraid I'm teaching a grandmother how to cook. So to my understanding, Malaysia's Madani strategy is Malaysia's grand strategy for development. Madani is elaborated by the new Industrial Master Plan 2030, which is in short NIMP 2030. NIMP 2030 is implemented through various plans and initiatives such as the 2024 budget plan or the National Energy Transition Roadmap, NETR. Now that we have a brief outline of our 2 country strategies, we can easily see that there are overlapping areas between them, especially some CASI's cooperation areas directly correspond to the 4 NIMP 2030 missions. I believe that these overlapping areas harbor big opportunity for cooperation between our 2 countries. Although I do not intend to dig into the specific details today, I think it would be helpful to provide some exemplary illustration on the overlapping areas. For example, let's take a look at the economic security. CASI views critical minerals cooperation as an important means to forge a stable, resilient supply chain. NIMP 2030 also aims to develop downstream industries surrounding critical minerals. As the 2 countries are working together to sign an MOU on supply chain cooperation, including critical minerals, I believe that we can come to a mutually beneficial result in this area. I will further elaborate on NIMP Mission 3 later, but for now, I would like to note that the ROK Malaysia Climate Change Dialogue was established this year and took place in Kuala Lumpur in October. I hope that the dialogue continues to perform as a platform for pushing forward our cooperation on climate change and energy transition. Finally, I believe that the people-to-people exchange Dr. Mohammed noted in his opening, outlined in the CASI, can contribute to Malaysia Madani's goals on education and training as planned in your 2024 budget. I would like to note that we are also standing on a rich soil for people-to-people exchange, which is the Look East policy. One of the most prominent and consistent projects of the Look East policy is the Executive Development Program for Malaysian government officials. The program has been running for 39 years, since 1984, with 1,784 graduates up to date. And also, before the COVID pandemic, more than 1 million tourists from both countries visited each other. Building on such existing basis, we look forward to further expanding our people-to-people exchanges to sectors in which the visions of the Kasi and Madani overlap. This may include people-to-people exchanges involving the private sector and exchanges in areas such as Tibet. Now I will move on to the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, CSP, between the ROK and ASEAN. The establishment of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership is our first priority for the next year to commemorate the 35th anniversary of a dialogue relation between ROK and ASEAN. By establishing the CSP, we will upgrade the cooperation between ASEAN and Korea in promoting freedom and rule-based order and bringing greater prosperity in this region. We will maximize synergy and complementarities by combining the strengths and goals of ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and Kasi. Under the CSP, the Korean government will continue to support the ASEAN community vision in 3 pillars. We call them the ABC vision. Vision A stands for advancing security and peace for all. Vision B aims at building a smarter, greener, and connected future. Vision C is for creating socio-cultural platform for future generations. First, Vision A. Korea, as a comprehensive strategic partner, will strengthen the high-level engagement among defense authorities of ASEAN and foster tailored defense industry cooperation through multi-layered channels of strategic communication. We also look forward to expanding cooperation to tackle non-traditional and emerging security challenges, including cybersecurity and transnational crimes. Maritime safety and security will also be given high priority through new and existing consultation channels. Among others, we will support the capacity building in maritime law enforcement and maritime domain awareness of our ASEAN partners. Now, under Vision B, ASEAN-ROK economic partnership will be further expanded with special focus on the areas of digital transformation, green growth, and ASEAN connectivity, especially to assist ASEAN's efforts to address climate change and energy transition. The Partnership for ASEAN-ROK Methane Action was also launched this year. We will also explore ways to cooperate with ASEAN and ASEAN member states on President Yoon's proposed carbon-free energy initiative. Last but not least, Vision C. As a strong supporter of the ASEAN socio-cultural community, the ROK will faithfully work to create a socio-cultural platform for young and future generations of ASEAN. Greater bonds of friendship and solidarity between the peoples of Korea and our ASEAN will continue to be nurtured through various programs of art, music, films, and sports exchanges. They will lay foundation for our long and sustainable relationship into the future. The scholarship programs such as Global Korea Scholarship, Korea Fellowship Program, higher education for ASEAN talents will be expanded. In addition, technical and vocational education and training program, TVET programs, will be strengthened. Now I have lots of homework to do in order to prepare for the establishment of the CSP at the ASEAN-ROK Summit meeting in Vientiane, scheduled in next October. So we are now strenuously working on a concept note on the CSP, which will be circulated to our ASEAN member states, hopefully next month. Looking at the planned schedule, we can expect that actual implementation of ASEAN-ROK CSP programs will take place in 2025. Notably, in that very year, Malaysia will assume ASEAN chairmanship. Malaysia is such a crucial partner for us in the ASEAN ROK CSP's success. Finally, I would like to introduce to you some specific areas of our CSP vision that converge with Malaysia's policy priorities. One is non-traditional and emerging security sector, including dealing with cybersecurity and transnational crimes, including job scams. I've heard that recently over 120 Malaysian citizens, possibly victims of job scams, was rescued. Building on this, I believe that cybersecurity and transnational crimes is an area in which the two countries can both interested in. Furthermore, we believe that cooperation on TVET training program, which I explained earlier, may also, sorry for this, this is kind of our government's effort to contribute to the carbon-free world, cutting off the electricity sharply at 12 o'clock lunchtime. Furthermore, we believe that cooperation on TVET, which I explained earlier, may also be an area of your interest, considering the fact that 6.8 billion ringgits, remarkable amount, is allocated on TVET program on your 2024 budget. We hope that we can expand cooperation in this area also. I can easily understand how much importance Malaysia places on building a greener future just by looking at Malaysia's multi-layered policies. Sustainability, which is the M, Kemampanan in Madani, is elaborated by mission number 3, push for net zero, of the NIMP 2030. This is implemented by specific initiatives such as the National Energy Transition Roadmap. In this respect, I hope that we can connect and coordinate Malaysia's visions and initiatives with Korea's carbon-free energy initiative and discover various means of cooperation, such as further expanding cooperation on CCS and hydrogen projects. Last but not the least, considering that Malaysia is a maritime Southeast Asian nation, I think that we can search for opportunities for strengthening cooperation in the maritime and marine sectors. This may include maritime law enforcement and domain awareness, reducing marine plastic litters. So for today, this is a brief outline on the converging visions of ROK and Malaysia. I hope that the later speakers have a productive discussion on this specific ways to further deepening to the relation of our bilateral relations. In closing, thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I will be very pleased to respond to any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. We do appreciate your time. I was informed by the organizers that you cannot stay for the whole session, that you have to leave sooner or later. Would you be able to take 1 or 2 questions now so that you can, which allows you to make your exit when you need to, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, certainly.
Fantastic. I'll just open this up very, very quickly. If anyone has any particular questions for DG Lee, now would be the time to ask it of him, because he can't stay for the whole session. That was what I was informed. Are there any particular? Yes, I see you, sir, right in front there. You probably need to use the mic so he can hear you. And please introduce yourself.
Can I add some? Yes, indeed. I informed before that I have to leave for another the important meeting organized by the Korea ASEAN Center, taking advantage of this lunch break. But I already informed that the organizer that I cannot attend that session because of this very important meeting organized by the ISIS as well as the Korean Embassy. So I will stay on this.
Fantastic.
Session.
That is very, very good. So that allows us, sorry, sir, that allows us to get on with the regularly scheduled programming. To our next speaker, Dr. Lee Jae-in. Dr. Lee Jae-in, you have 10 minutes. I'm going to be more strict with the time management from now on. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. Since the moderator is very strict about time, I first have to set my timer. 10 minutes. Starts now. Okay. It's great honor to be here in this seminar. And I'm very excited to be back in Kuala Lumpur. This is my first visit since the COVID-19. And before I start, I first have to thank Professor Dr. Muhammad Faiz Abdullah and ISIS Malaysia, as well as Ambassador Yosungbe and Korean Embassy for having me here. It's a great opportunity to catch up with my old friend in Kuala Lumpur. And before I start, I have to say this first. It's very unfair because the Deputy Director General already covered so many topics of Korea, Malaysia, CASI, and the Pacific strategy, and there's nothing I can add regarding the Korean government's official position. And but anyway, I was invited to deliver something on the regional affairs. I prepared these two topics. First, kind of strategic outlook 2023 and 2024. And I will particularly focus on the U.S. engagement in the region and what regional small and medium countries like Malaysia and Korea and ASEAN as a whole can do in this strategic context. And the second topic is bilateral cooperation between Korea and Malaysia. And already Mr. Lee Dong-gi covered lots about the CASI, and I will particularly focus on strategic and security cooperation between Korea and Malaysia. Right. The scorecard of the United States, particularly in the Biden administration in the past 3 years, overall is quite disappointing from my own perspective. Mr. Biden came to the office with a refreshed commitment to the region, Indo-Pacific region. He talked about build back better and rebuilding alliance with the regional countries. But the result after 3 years, particularly focusing on Southeast Asia. First, economic leadership. Regional countries are still pretty much preoccupied with the traditional economic aspects like free trade, market access, and those are the kind of regional economic aspiration. But the Biden administration did not pay much attention to the revival of TPP, and they put RCEP aside as a Chinese initiative in the region. And instead, the United States came out with IPF, and it's US, the Biden's version of a rule setting, economic rule setting in this part of the world. But mostly it focuses on high-tech aspects. And also it tried to build exclusive supply chain led by United States. On the other hand, the U.S. foreign policy put so much emphasis on protectionism, with the slogan like foreign policy for the middle class. And as earlier in the opening session, the chairman mentioned that all these shoring things, friend shoring, reshoring, taking all the factories and business back to the U.S. soil. It's a kind of expression of U.S. protectionism. And the strategic leadership, instead of engaging with the many regional countries, the U.S. emphasized Quad, AUKUS, and later trilateral cooperation among the U.S., Japan, and South Korea. It says all traditional allies are important for the U.S. strategic interest in the Pacific region. And on Southeast Asia, United States plan for Southeast Asia only focuses on some countries like Singapore, Vietnam, and in this year particularly the Philippines. So given all these symptoms, I would say there is already strategic small yard and high fence is going on when it comes to U.S. engagement with the Indo-Pacific and particularly Southeast Asia. As you can see from this graph, the already Southeast Asian countries and opinion leaders see that the U.S. engagement is getting lower and lower and weaker. And you can see the lowering expectation from the Southeast Asian opinion leaders from this graph, as done by Singapore ISIS. And the 2024 prospects and implication for the regional small and medium countries. It's very close competition between Biden and Trump at the moment. And in the whole year 2024, the United States will be preoccupied with the presidential election, and they wouldn't come out with any new, fresh foreign policy initiative toward the Indo-Pacific or Southeast Asia. And the worst scenario I can expect is Trump administration coming back to the White House. And in the first Trump term, President Trump, it was his first term and he was not quite experienced and he didn't know what agenda to push and he didn't have such a confidence. But in the second term, he knows his agenda and he will be very confident in pushing his agenda, foreign policy agenda forward. So from the first year, what I can expect is kind of pivoting away from ASEAN, Southeast Asia, and Indo-Pacific region. If that happens, it effectively means a collapse of balance of power in this part of the world. US withdraws from this part of the world, then as China dominates the region, which means the collapse of a balance of power. And the collapse of a balance of power is really bad for ASEAN's hedging strategy. There should be two competing superpowers in the region so that the ASEAN hedging strategy can work. But without balance of power, without United States, the hedging strategy cannot be effectively exercised. And for the regional small and medium countries cooperation, as I mentioned, if the superpower balance in this part of the world collapsed, then we have to seriously ask a question to ourselves. Do we have to build a coalition of small and medium powers in this part of the world to sustain the balance of power? The vacuum that US has left should be filled by small and medium powers coalition? Or do we have to discuss the rise of the rest? This rise of the rest rhetoric was in place when Trump was in power and 2017, 18, something like that. The countries in the region, some countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and ASEAN, we have to build the bulwark against the bulwark that can maintain the regional rules-based order. And of course, the rules-based order in this part of the world is in danger. The rules-based order is definitely the interest of small and medium powers. If we have a clear, predetermined rules in this region, we can control and manage the superpowers unilateralism in this part of the world. And I worried about superpowers' dominance of this rules-based order discourse before, but today I see kind of a noodle ball of a rules-based order. Everyone is talking about rules-based order, but there's no clear definition. So the regional small and medium countries have to come out with a clearly defined rules-based order to reflect their own strategic interest. The next one is about Korea's KASI, and I don't have to go through all this because already Deputy Director General Lee Dong-gi covered all this topic. But there's only one thing I would like to emphasize, that the Korean government with KASI is putting emphasis on strategic and security cooperation with Southeast Asian countries, which was left behind in the previous administrations. For the strategic cooperation and security cooperation, there are a few items we can talk about. The balance of power in the region, what is the best rules-based order for the small and medium countries, and that's the way to strengthen ASEAN centrality and small and medium powers leverage against the big powers. And I'm particularly interested in the maritime cooperation, and South Korean Navy and Coast Guard are already so much geared up for cooperation with ASEAN countries. There are so many items of cooperation like, capacity building, maritime law enforcement, particularly focusing on IUU fishing, and I hope regional small and medium countries build their own joint maritime exercise model. And last but not the least, defense industry cooperation is very important. South Korea have to think defense industry cooperation beyond defense exports. It should be their cooperation. And South Korea has to think about how to build the defense industry in Southeast Asian countries for their own security. Southeast Asian countries have to have proper defense capability to secure their sovereignty in the maritime domain in Southeast Asia. I got a few more items to talk, but we'll stop here. And I welcome any question or comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jae-hyun, and my apologies for that. We're going to go into the portion of the discussants and to respond to the presentations made by DDG Lee and by Jae-hyun, and they were extremely significant presentations. That there's a lot there to chew on. DDG Lee, at least in my view, he there was a very interesting attempt to highlight particular areas of cooperation under CASI and directly with Malaysia and with ASEAN, which I hope some of our discussants can come back on. Jae-hyun, Jae-hyun's enlarged the discussion on the broader strategic impact, and that leads me to wonder whether will US engagement in the region impact ROK ASEAN cooperation? Because there is, unfortunately, there is a line of thinking in Southeast Asia that for US treaty allies, they will ultimately revert back to DC and when it comes to how they choose to engage with Southeast Asia, which really diminishes the agency that you guys have. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. So we're going to go into the portion where the discussants respond. I want to give you guys an additional minute of, to make it 6 minutes. I think there's a lot of issues to address. We'll go in order. Nurliana, Roy, and then Iza. Nurliana, 6 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much, Thomas. So for both speakers, thank you very much for sharing your presentations. I found it very interesting that we are looking at more and more this idea of how we need to look beyond what we are currently working on in terms of cooperation. There seems to be an increasing concern or disillusionment with big powers throughout, and perhaps safe also to say, as Dr. Lee has pointed out, rather pessimistic outlook towards the balance of power and leadership roles of bigger countries in these regions. Hence, for both speakers, it seems very important that we move towards how cooperation between a collection of small and medium power should be the one that would create the most impact, particularly in regions where there is really no big power holding leadership. And perhaps that's where ASEAN has always been able to take advantage of, due to the fact that there is no one overwhelming power in the region. Hence, we are able to move towards better regional cooperation, or not, where ASEAN seems to be stalling, but yet also still chugging along. So in that sense, the idea of having a pivotal role in ASEAN would help with countries like ASEAN members who generally are developing and tend to have very inward-looking policies in the region. And although there are policies talking about ASEAN centrality, talking about the need to push global agenda and play a role, for most ASEAN countries, the main concerns remain inwards, remains towards its own development. So the need for more comprehensive strategic and defense alignment, for example, and building a defense capacity and cooperation that goes beyond just military sales to Southeast Asian countries would definitely be beneficial. I think in that sense, maybe one question I have towards Dr. Lee is, do you think that this would be a bigger benefit for all ASEAN countries within themselves towards the peace in the region? Because if big powers aside, the increase of military and defense capacity within the region might also impact internal structures. So how do you think that would play out if South Korea is to play such a big role? In the second idea, I think that we talk about maintaining solidarity and how that continues to matter more today and in this day and age, where we are looking at the various areas of cooperation. One thing that is certain, prior to this, some of the criticisms that had come from the New Southern policy, or maybe even a few policies before, was that at the end of the day, majority of engagement still remained within the economic and development dimension. So KASI was supposed to be a move away from that, where we are looking now at better strategic relationships and perhaps more concrete development on the cooperation side. However, I'm wondering if this really is so necessary to the point that it would, again, like I said, create internal divisions, but at the same time also cooperation does not necessarily need to mean that moving away from economics would not lead to spillovers in strategic areas as well. Because what is important for small regions like ASEAN generally is to create a region that is free from want and free from fear. So fear has more to do with its own development capacity, its own survivability capacity. Hence, for most ASEAN countries, the concern really is on economics issues and development issues. And as our speakers have also pointed out, much of KASI's strategic initiative still falls under economic development initiative, but now moving it towards where we can get sustainable development, addressing larger concerns which are intertwined both in transnational concerns, climate change concerns, sustainable development concerns. Is there large trade-offs that we might need to make in order to reach or in order to achieve these goals, rather than just focusing on how we can invest in businesses and build those economic corporations? So perhaps I think maybe that question I can I can address to our Mr. Lee. Yes, Mr. Lee. Do you think that there are things that Korea might be willing to do in terms of major trade-offs that you might be concerned about when working with the ASEAN members? So I will end my session here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nurliana. Roy, thank you.
Thank you very much to the organizers. Indeed, it's an honor to be here this morning and to be present to listen to the two speakers. From what I have gathered, you see, the relations between ROK and Southeast Asia can be divided mainly on how ROK engages Southeast Asia through multilateral means and bilateral means. Multilateral means through the Indo-Pacific initiative and also ASEAN, and bilaterally is to individual countries that includes Malaysia, so Seoul, Kuala Lumpur. And within this engagement, there are three, I would say, pillars, as had been mentioned by DDG, that is on regional security, diplomacy, that's within first pillar, and then economy, as well as social culture. And very interesting, I was very much attracted to what DGG mentioned about cybersecurity, combating transnational crime like scams, and also Dr. Lee also mentioned about the defense industry. So perhaps maybe like to ask Dr. Lee, as you also mentioned about the increase of defense industry. Southeast Asian countries have been procuring weapons from the United States and other European partners. Korea, yes, we have been procuring weapons, but what is the advantage of the Korean defense industry compared to, say, the French defense industry, which traditionally that has been the market in this part of the world? And apart from that, I think very important key aspect is also on military diplomacy. I used to teach in the defense, the Malaysian Armed Forces Defense College and Staff College. So the importance of military diplomacy. And another thing is that was raised by Dr. Lee is if the return, or I would say return, Empire Strikes Back of Donald Trump administration 2.0 by November 2024, then we may anticipate a decrease of US role again in this part of the world. Of course, the next option, as was mentioned by Dr. Lee, is relations with China, because the hedging policy seems to be without US, then what is that to hedge? So the issue is, how do we face this situation if this were to happen? And ROK, then I think ROK and Southeast Asia should work even more closer if a scenario of that were to happen, to be more resilient, or in Malay we say ketahanan, which ASEAN has been quite active in that in even the early days in the 70s during the time of the late Ghazali Shafi'i. So, so these are some of my points that I've gathered. So my question is, first, Dr. Lee, you mentioned about the defense industry. What is the advantage if Southeast Asian countries were to move towards more on ROK and military diplomacy, and also to DDG? You have highlighted about also on maritime security. What is the role of ROK, for example, in this? What can ROK contribute, say, on the Straits of Malacca, which is, although it's named Straits of Malacca, but it's of a common interest of all, including ROK. Thank you very much. I hope I keep within 6 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, you actually was about under 4 minutes, so that's either good or bad. I can't tell right now.
Yeah.
But okay, what I'm going to do, Iza, before we get Iza to come in, there have been specific questions both for Jae-hoon and for DDG Lee, and after Iza is done, I'll give them an opportunity to respond immediately before we open it up to a wider Q&A. So Iza, floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. The previous two discussions before me did set up quite a good outlook, especially talking about the multilaterals, and then we slowly narrowed down to the strategic. I'm going to go a little bit further down to speak more on the direct defense cooperation between ROK and Malaysia, and then to a broader extent ASEAN. I think the one good thing about the announcement following Kasi and all that was saying that this is quite a good thing, in the sense that we are seeing a natural progression of defense cooperation, because in this region, defense is quite a no-no or a taboo topic, because a lot of these issues are really centering around their sovereignty, their own territorial integrity. These are all sensitive matters. And so the fact that countries are willing to open and actually engage in this is a good sign. This is promising. It is also highlighting a good space of how ROK has developed in the region, how they are perceived. And also in the sense, it's also a good sign of how Malaysia has evolved as well in seeing what they need and what they need to do, or who do they need to cooperate with to better themselves and to properly guard their national interests and security. And at this point, this should be capitalized. We've seen this as well. We've done this with Australia, the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. We're seeing similar trajectories. But at the same time, the one thing that we need to note that Malaysia is also a small country, given its current capacity and how reliant they are on external markets, external partners, and everything. So this does mean that we do need to be a bit selective. So how we start, we do, like, while we can be ambitious, we cannot bite two more than we can chew. I think one of the few things is, like, what is being highlighted quite often was the fact that defense industries, that's something that we need to be capitalizing. But the problem is with some of it, these are emerging markets. We haven't been able to tap in to this sort of demands yet. And I feel that maybe perhaps starting with other partners such as ROK would be one of the good jumping points for us. but it does also depend on the political will and interest surrounding it, because we're not sure how many governments are going to stay on with the same sort of interest. It has been quite evident in our past defense policies where they have been sidelined in one moment and highlighted in the next. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the program will be taking a short break. The next session will commence at 12:20. Welcome back to Solidarity Amid Disruption. The second session on building solidarity amid disruptions, enhancing people-to-people relations. We wish to invite our moderator, Dr. Nurliana Kamaruddin, Senior Lecturer at the Asia-Europe Institute, to take the floor. Dr. Nurliana, the floor is yours.
Right, thank you very much, Perlina. So I'm very, very honored to be able to introduce our three speakers. We have Moon Jae-in from Monash University, Malaysia. We have Dr. Kim Hyung-jong, who was with us in UM and now in Yonsei University. And we have Dr. Christina Yeo from the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture. I am also very happy to introduce our two discussants for today, Ms. Hirzawati Atika, who is from the All-Party Parliamentary Group Malaysia on SDGs, and Dr. Gita Govindasamy from University Malaya as well. So without further ado, let's start with our first presenter for today. Go ahead, Chair.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity, Your Excellency, Yeo Hong Bei, fellow panelists, and also distinguished guests and participants. So today I'm going to start us off, I guess, on the whole panel on building solidarity amidst disruption, enhancing people-to-people relationships. And this was the list of questions that were posed. Oops, is it working? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Right, and I'm going to try to address these questions, probably not in order, but in a way of what I did previously for another workshop, and then also slowly, directly and indirectly weave in and out of these questions here, right? People-to-people relationships is something that's not very easy to quantify. It's very hard to tell how much value you can get out of them as well, and how do you even evaluate that what you're doing is going to be worthwhile in the first place. And that was something I tried to figure out. And the way I did this was to try to reconceptualize understanding soft power rather than that of what the state or the government can get out of it, but it's to look at its currency. So in this case, what I did was that I looked at Korean YouTubers and how they use their identities as South Korean and the kind of mileage that they got out of it in Malaysia here. Now, some of you might be familiar with these individuals here, and this is Blimey. They are the most popular South Korean YouTubers within Malaysia as well. Okay, and so I looked at them and a few other YouTubers, and this is what I have discovered. So one of the things that became very, very clear quickly is that there is this kind of perception that Southeast Asia is Hunjinugok, right? And this means that it is backward, and this common idea permeates the Koreans' belief of the region in general. They see themselves as a much more developed country, and we are a region that is popularized for many different things depending on the country. Philippines for crime and drugs, Singapore for its modern development, Thailand for its food, and so on and so forth as well. And what has been found through research by different academics, right, is that in the case of Malaysia, its slower pace of life, especially in Kota Kinabalu, has been very attractive for those who are trying to escape the hyper-celerity or the fast-paced life back in South Korea. And they found value and interest, therefore, in coming to this part of the world. Okay. Now, the other thing that I looked at is how these YouTubers are also social mediators in a lot of ways, right? And they're achieving something called an Asian dream. The idea that rather than concentrate on trying to build success back in their home countries, what they do instead is that taking advantage of their identity as a favored other, they come to Southeast Asia and they use their identities to make a living off that as a whole. So by virtue of their status as South Korean, they then garner a very large following of locals within this region here in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia as a whole. So while Blimey has often been highlighted as a very good way to look at ties between Malaysia and South Korea and how there's some sort of cultural exchange, if you look carefully at the kind of people that subscribe to Blimey and some of these YouTubers, is that they cater specifically to a Malaysian audience. So the cultural exchange doesn't really travel back to South Korea and South Koreans in general. They look at, and their market is actually the Malaysian audience, right? And that means that there are certain things that we should take note of. So there is this kind of marketability of Koreanness or to be Korean, and we can see it in the way that they emphasize certain things as well, right? So YouTubers themselves serve as the subject. Even when they do their videos around Malaysia and Southeast Asia, for example, oftentimes the subject is themselves, not the food or the people or the local cultures that they are trying to use as their backdrop, right? So in essence, right, they are the product that they're marketing, and their consumers are the Southeast Asian watchers, as we will see shortly here, okay? And you can see this in how they phrase themselves. They don't use their names. They highlight that they are Korean girls, and it's them reacting to different things as well, right? Korea Riomit is a Indonesian YouTuber who grew up in Indonesia, and he talks a lot about Korean mystery stories and food and crime. Chubro is a mukbang YouTuber, and he's all about exploring Malaysian food, and it's really about his reactions and how he reacts to them that makes it sellable as a YouTuber as a whole. So this is just a classic example of what I mean about how they use identity, or how identity is used to market themselves. So you see I highlighted the words that a lot of their videos start with Korean girls react to this, Koreans react to so on and so forth. So in exploring this, right, what I come up and try to figure out is that how we can therefore evaluate how soft power, or Korea's soft power in this case, right, has such marketability that it has helped garner these three individuals, these girls, the ability to make a living here in Southeast Asia. And you can actually chart their success. So if you look at their videos from the very initial inception of their YouTube channel to what it is today, you can see a very remarkable change. So they really made it big, right? When they, in happenstance, tried Malaysian snacks. So happened they knew someone who came back from Kota Kinabalu, and they wanted to do a quick reaction video on it. Prior to that, their YouTube channel garnered about 20 to 30K views, or even less. And that particular video garnered them 300,000 views. And we can see then, if you look at their channel, a series of experimentation. They tried more reaction videos for different food, but they actually never managed to capture that huge amount again until they did the Malaysian Maggi hot cups. So they look at Malaysian Maggi mee, all the different flavors and so forth. And if you look today, it has 1.4 million views. And that's when a aha moment and lightning rod happened for these three girls. And they switched their content entirely to that of Malaysia. They made trips to Malaysia to engage and to meet Malaysians as a whole. And in their videos, what they talk about often when they ask Q&A is why did they choose Malaysia? It's really because they found people who like watching their videos, and they were mostly all Malaysian as a whole, right? Now, this means that these individuals have benefited not only in terms of sponsorship, but you can see there down below, the Korean government, the Malaysian government also took advantage of that and tried to capitalize on that. And I think to a large extent, again, the biggest winners from all of this is mostly these individuals, these YouTubers again, rather than real Malaysian, Korean foreign ties. But this gives an idea of how there are ways perhaps to quantify how soft power has worked and how effective soft power is through the use of identity as a whole. So it's a bit more of a cultural studies kind of approach to the whole method. Now, what can we learn from this is that there is an unequal dynamics between the South Korean Malaysian people-to-people relationship. South Korea is the cultural producer, and Southeast Asia, Malaysia, we are the consumer market that consumes it, right? There is this kind of perception that South Korea is superior, Malaysia is inferior, and it's not only what is projected to the YouTube videos, but if you read the comments, right, a lot of the Malaysians are actually saying that you need to try this, and it's a kind of need or untalked want for validation of Malaysian identity and food and so on and so forth as well. Okay. But there are also a lot of misconceptions. Talking to a colleague that I have is from South Korea, and he does research into the South Korean diaspora in the country. There is a lot of them do not come out from their enclaves. They stay within the South Korean community within Malaysia, and they do not really mix with the locals as well. And the general perception and misconception that Malaysia is a conservative Muslim country. And oftentimes what this means is that when news is picked up, especially on foreign news of Malaysia or even Southeast Asia, it's often the more eccentric, and that often means the more negative news as well, right? So these are some of the things that color the kind of relationship dynamics that we have from a people-to-people's perspective, okay? And then there's also an issue of branding amidst ASEAN countries. Malaysia is a bit directionalist in that respect. Thailand focuses a lot on its food. Singapore has claimed a lot of what is used to be Malaysian culture to be part of theirs as well. Some of it, as like Indonesia, is well known for their holiday destinations and so forth as well. And so a lot of these things makes it a very challenging place for Malaysia to posit itself in this kind of people-to-people relationship. Okay, but there has been changes, right? And what we can see is, if you look at this news article, is that this Indonesian who went and worked in South Korea, right, was actually very startled at first about what they thought about Indonesia in this region. But it's through these people-to-people connections that people get a glimpse into what the real Indonesian, the real Malaysian, and so forth is like, beyond just holiday destinations and what they see or hear on the news media as a whole. Okay, so what are the gaps and opportunities that are available? Okay, one of the main ones I think is that Malaysia can be a very good hub for multicultural, intercultural trading. We have a very diverse population, and we also highlight this diversity for good or for bad in many different ways. And this kind of nuance, right, is, I think, very good ground for homogeneous nations to understand what it is to live in a multicultural society, both the good and the bad as well. And why I think this is very important is that if you read and you know what's happening around the world, a lot of nations, especially homogeneous ones, are grappling with the idea of multiculturalism because of population decline and the need for foreign workers and foreign migrants coming into the country as a whole. So Malaysia can be a good way to ease people into the idea of this multicultural, the idea of tolerance, the idea of trying to balance different wants and needs and identities, trying to live and work in a community as a whole. The other thing that I would say that there is a very good opportunity and a gap for us to really think about, right, is the Korean diaspora within the country. Rather than trying to woo or to attract Koreans that are in Korea, I think one very good way is to actually look at the Koreans that are already in Malaysia, because there is already an opportunity right there from Korean students to mingle with local students as a whole, the Korean towns, Korean entrepreneurs, the mothers, the omas that take their kids to school. And what we tend to see again is that they stay within their enclaves and in their little communities. They don't really intermix. And so if we can bridge that gap and understand how to reach out to them and bring them in and convert them to what it is to be Malaysian, then I think they'll be the best ambassadors that Malaysia will have, because they will know the norms of both countries and cultures as well. And of course, you cannot not mention food, right? We have diverse food. It is one of our greatest selling points, and we need to learn to market it better. Like See this guy here, Chubro. He's enjoying a Ramly burger, as you can see. Okay. So in conclusion, not to take out any more time, right? Where is media diplomacy for Malaysia? In the case of Malaysia, it is very limited, if done at all. And current policies tend to exoticize our multicultural identity. And this is perhaps not a fault of the government, but really it's so that we can stand out in the crowded Southeast Asian region. But we really need to rethink how we do our multiculturalism and how we want to project ourselves if we want to encourage people-to-people ties between us and South Korea as well. And I think that kind of mixing would be much more authentic and much more nuanced in the many different ways as well. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, On. I think that's a very interesting take in terms of perceptions, identities, as well as the gaps when it comes to cultural producers, cultural commodity producers and consumers. So moving along, I'd like to now invite Dr. Kim to give your presentation. So you have 10 minutes.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to thank you for the organizer, ISIS Malaysia and the Korean Embassy for giving me such a great opportunity. So I think what I want to share with you actually is some kind of the extension of the first session rather than focusing on the people to people. But since I'm engaging a kind of the people to student exchange program in our university, in a Q&A session, I hope also I can share some my experience and opinions on the people-to-people exchange. So actually, what I'm going to do is that after reviewing the bilateral diplomatic relation between ROK and Malaysia, I'll try to draw some implication for the future bilateral relations. So major factor actually, and not only it doesn't limit it to two countries, Malaysia and ROK, but in general, the foreign policies is affected by some domestic factors and external challenges, and the leadership, and then the key characteristic of the domestic politics, and so on. So, right, we can summarize in this way the ROK and the Malaysia's relation. So actually, two countries that discussing and the developing two countries bilateral relations are actually some kind of the very unique compared to other Southeastern countries, because we don't have the historical baggages, unlike the case of the Vietnam. Well, we don't share much about that somehow negative side. So luckily we can discuss and touch freely from that kind of the negative side. Sorry. So two countries has interacted and to reflect its own strategic need, and then also to meet the external challenges. But also we have to admit that during the Cold War and even after the Cold War eras, so the two countries has emphasized much on the economic, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there was the absence of the political and security concern between two countries. But actually, the very beginning, the initial stage of the bilateral relations, the major driving force for that the bilateral relation, that was the political and security concern that will explore later on. So, but the important point is that in our first session, we've discussed and questioned on that the relation between bilateral and regionalism. But I saw that in the case of these two countries' relation, regionalism has played a very critical role. It has provided room and opportunity, and bringing two countries much closer. In the case of the regional the diplomatic event, two countries were able to get in closer and then interact actively. Right. If you look at the every stage of the bilateral relations, so very beginning, so two countries share the common interest in the field of the political security. So as you know that Malaysia at that time faces some of the political challenges internally and externally. So like the confrontacies, and then still active the communist campaigns in domestically. And ROK also, there was the legacy of the Korean War, and also as a foreign policies and as a basic strategy for the survival, the anti-communism has been very important. The figure of the South Koreans, the diplomacy. So actually, political and security concern has brought two countries closer initial stage. That's my point. And also there was some discussion on the possible collaboration on that proposed regional initiative by the South Korea. There's aspect ASPAC, but it was later to face some challenges because of the I don't say it's the negative or the positive, but it's somehow changing the aspect because of the change of the leadership and because of the some domestic factors and introduction of the NEP, and the Malaysia has turned to the its foreign policy to neutrality. So Malaysia's role in developing neutrality as a regional or the ASEAN's norm is very critical, as you know. But from the perspective of the South Korea, because still South Korea was very keen to get support from that Malaysia in competing North Korea. But the strict adherence to the neutrality has played a kind of the hindrance to developing the bilateral and diplomatic cooperation between two countries in political areas. And the era since 1980s and then the far more the mid 2000s. So actually, I can say there is heyday of the bilateral relation between two countries. So we also observed that this period, the two countries has achieved a certain level of the economic growth, which has increased each country's economic weight through each other's. And also, we have to pay attention that there was an introduction of the regional initiative by each country. So Malaysia, the former leader of Malaysia, Mahathir, has initiated the North-East policy, and now it's a renewed version, LEP 2.0, and even someone talk about the LEP 3.0. And Korea, actually, the South Korea has relied much on that its foreign policies and diplomatic approach to Southeast Asia through the bilateralism. But amid of the economic crisis, 1997-1998, and with the birth of the Asian +3 cooperation, but it has took the very active role by proposing EABG and EASG and so on. So I can say that the two countries, the approaches that share the congruent point through that regionalism. And somehow the very dynamic period in developing the two countries' relations. So as you know that externally the environment has changed from that the more stable to that more turbulent due to the U.S.-China's rivalry. And internally, so two countries has undergone that domestic, the political, I said turbulence, or somehow in some sense is also kind of the domestic political development as well. As you know that one MDB said Najib, so Malaysia has experienced that the change in government since its independence. And the ROK also has undergone a kind of the very unforeseen, unprecedented political development, and and with that the candle revolutions and so on. So at that time also the Pakata PH the governments and the Moon Jae-in's government, they can share that some the common interest through that the regional initiative, particularly the New Southern policy has provided a kind of the congruent point for the two countries and two regions that in bilateral interest as well. So now we are heading and looking at the time of the CASI, what they explained in the session 1. Well, I don't want to repeat everything again, but somehow important thing is the CASI it is kind of should be seen as an extension and the continuity of the New Southern policy, though there are some different priority and the emphasis. So the importance of the having good relation with Southeast Asia has increasingly become a bipartisan issues in South Korea. So as you know that there's change in government from the conservative and then relatively progressive parties and so on. But the importance of the ASEAN and that has been there already. So but only different thing is how do they practice, how do they realize that the such bilateral relation that matters. So for now, so we can see there's some major factor from the Korean side in improving the bilateral relation between the ROK and Malaysia. So actually, despite the introduction of the CASI and as a regional initiative, the South Korea's main approach to Southeast Asia still much rely on the bilateral relation. So it inevitably may provoke a kind of the challenges because that its bilateral relation seems to be very much reliant and heavily concentrated on certain countries like the Vietnam when it comes to that economic issues. But countries like the Malaysia never lag behind from that economic cooperation because the Malaysia also has a certain role in promoting the economic relation between two, especially what is seen is that given that the economic development level, so rather than economic developmental gap, now what it can share is that the common challenge or the common ambition to develop each economy for the future-oriented sectors. So most the risk, one of the risks in the bilateral relation that is of course the inter-Korean relations. So that is the growing the concern from the South Korean side and Malaysian side, and also for the last 2 years since the 2018, there's been political uncertainty and the growing concern about that, the instability. But now the ANR-led unity government is expected to provide a platform for sharing goal and the values with South Korea. And also we are expecting that Malaysia could play a more active role compared with the uncertain period. Especially we are expecting its upcoming the ASEAN chairman's role in 2025, and that would be a kind of the bridging role between the ASEAN and Korea. Historically, the Malaysia has played very important role when South Korea became the ASEAN's dialogue partner in 1989, and when North Korea became the member of the ARF, and Malaysia was played very important role. So I can say that not only within the ASEAN, but between ASEAN and Korea, Malaysia has played a role of the kind of the vision provider and then honest mediator. So that is the Malaysia role. So CASI's limitation, we have heard a lot of positive story, but that's why I only shed light on that somehow negative. Non-negative, I say still the potential or the limit. Still is 1A. So as in a previous presentation, even the culture and people-to-people exchange, there's the 1A interaction it's been still the major characteristic. And so that's why we need to kind of develop an approach and mutual understanding and to enhance and to have the longer and stable and sustainable the cultural relation between the two sides. And also the CASI has emphasized on the economic securities, and also in the security strategy term, they emphasize on the comprehensive security and cooperative security. But what we're facing now is that not only defending for the economic development, not only for defending our national territory, but more in comprehensive approach that based on the concept of the human security that would be a bring higher level of the cooperation between ASEAN Korea and ASEAN Malaysia as well. So that is the also people-to-people exchange much highlighted and has become a major component of the KASI. And I'm expecting that the South Korean government also pay more attention and on this the people-to-people exchange. Malaysia is ranked higher, though it's not the I mean the migrant workers exporting countries, but I mean the natural visitors and the tourists ranked higher than other ASEAN member countries. So students in Korea also, beside Vietnam, so Malaysia has been the leading in terms of the number and at the various level. Right. So for concluding, though it's very short, but I want to say that regionalism should be seen as a kind of the catalyst for improving bilateralism between the two countries. And KASI at this moment need to promote a sense of the community based on value of cross-parties and not really focusing on the strict adherence to and reciprocities and then quantitative goals. And KASI also need to incorporate social aspect in economic cooperation. Possibly one of the ways that adopting the notion of the human security and social economy and so on. I may stop here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for sharing with us where else, I think, in terms of the KASI initiative, especially in terms of what we can do for people-to-people exchanges, which could impact and improve the relationship between Malaysia and South Korea. So moving along, I'd like to now invite Dr. Yo.
Very good afternoon, Mr. Harris, Deputy Director Research of ISIS, Ambassador Yo, esteemed colleagues from the Korean Embassy and also ISIS, ladies and gentlemen. So I had the privilege to be here today. Thank you for allowing me to share a bit about our national culture policy. The first session was pretty heavy, dry, because it's political security there. So we always say from the Kementerian Pelancongan Seni Budaya, Tourism, Arts and Culture, we said that we are the happy people. So we try to enlighten you with our enlightening deck here, okay? Okay, Ambassador Yo often use the word kawan, baik, when it comes to the relationship between Malaysia and Korea. I elevate it further to sahabat baik, okay? So I'm just going to share with you a bit about our DAKEN. In short, it's Dasar Kebudayaan Negara, culture cooperation and riding the LEP waves. I was given these 4 questions. The first question was about how do we actually quantify and assess people-to-people exchanges and relations? For me, I think this Cynthia Schneider, I think she has encapsulated the answer very well. Can we actually quantify? So I think that provides you the answer. We can't really quantify people-to-people exchanges, culture exchanges. Okay, why Dasar Kebudayaan Negara or National Culture Policy matters? It's basically a 5-year blueprint. 2021 it was launched, and it serves as a guiding principle to uphold cultural diversity in Malaysia's multiracial society. My earlier colleagues, Dr. Kim and Chen On, was sharing about Malaysia being so diverse, this multiculturalism is a double-edged sword. If we manage it, we can optimize on it. It will bring very much impact and multiplier effect. But currently, we have some issues in managing and optimizing on our diversity and multiculturalism, but we can do better. Okay, and it is also a guiding principle to demonstrate the rights to practice culture and express creativity. And of course, the underlying core is about preserving, conserving, and protecting the nation's culture treasures. So you see under Kementerian Pelancongan Seni Budaya, Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, you have the National Department of Heritage. You have the National Department of Culture and Art. So those are all our culture treasures that we should conserve and safeguard. The overriding motto is Negara Maju Rakyat Berbudaya. So we want to be a developed nation, but we want to have a high culture, civilized nation as well. So, yep, you can, if you want to read further, it is downloadable at the Dasar Kebudayaan Negara link there. Okay. 7 thrusts There are 39 strategies, 95 action plans. I'm not going to bore you with that. The thing, basically, this 7 Trust talks about, how to build a harmonious society using high value culture. And one of the thrusts being the importance of safeguarding and also preserving the culture treasures, our intangible and tangible cultural heritage for the future generation. And we talk about pembangunan dan pengembangan budaya, meaning that there must be expansion, there must be research and development, there must be promotion of our culture. Pemerkasaan budaya talks about the infrastructure, and ultimately it's important that we look at how culture and creative industry is supposed to contribute to the creative economy. That we have much to do. This I will reach out to researchers and also policy think tanks to look into how we can further improve our capacity in terms of contributing to the creative and culture industries. And Thrust ketujuh is about culture excellence. Okay, we in Malaysia do have great culture, but do we leverage it for great diplomacy work? Okay, Hallyu Korean Wave has always been, of course, in the recent past 10 years, has been the benchmark for us, as we carve, curate, and how we do our Malaysian way. You have the Korean way, because it's about learning from each other. So now we are trying to push out my way, Malaysian wave, my way. So Malaysia stands for MY, my way. So we can see that that this Korean wave has brought so much transformation, have brought so much of the Korean influence globally. And we're not talking of the dollar and cents that without dispute is tremendously huge to the Korean economy. And I'm captivated by this article by this Tae Yong Kim and Dae Jong Jin, where they actually research about how Hallyu is mentioned in presidential speeches. Because we believe that leadership and top-down internalization of what you want to promote, how you want to promote your culture is very important. Yeah. So we can see that how those past presidents, how much they have put the emphasis on Hallyu and make it a success. And we want to emulate that. Okay. They always say don't waste a crisis. So during COVID, we are pretty much locked down in our house. And that was a point in time where, it's a good opportunity for us to reflect things that we have not done, because there are so many daily things that bogged us down. So 2020 was the 60th year of diplomatic relationship between Malaysia and South Korea. So we managed to work closely online with our legal advisors and our colleagues from the embassy to actually wrap up a pending more than 10 years, a decade-long MOU, which has not been sealed. So we managed to seal it online. So it was done in a very systematically safe, virtual manner. So we managed to sign off our cultural cooperation with Korea in December 2020. And from there, we have moved along many more initiatives to increase the bilateral and people-to-people exchanges between both countries. And subsequently, it's also still during the, restriction movement time, we managed to do a Malaysia ROK Asia Traditional Orchestra. It's a mini, because we can't involve everybody. So it's a mini Asia Traditional Orchestra, where you can see that top left. It's so nice, to have that is a Malaysian artist wearing the hanbok, singing Arirang. And we have the orchestra playing all the different songs from ASEAN, and also predominantly the Korean popular folk songs. So that was done subsequently after the MOU signing. Next. Sorry. Yeah, that is bilaterally. At the, you can't discount ASEAN when we talk about culture diplomacy. So in ASEAN, there are 3 pillars, as you're all aware. You have the economic pillar, you have the social culture pillar, you have the political security. You factoring into the sensitivity and technicality of cooperation, we cannot dispute that, political, security, and economic, their formulation is much messier. But you were thought that culture is something that is like it's like a no-brainer. There should be no sensitivity, no problem. But like our colleagues from ISIS mentioned just now, even culturally, together ASEAN, all 10 AMS to agree on a joint project with South Korea takes years, even for culture project that is funded under the ASEAN Culture Fund. Yeah, so yeah, but if you don't have issues, don't have crisis, it's not fun, right? So it's good that, like for example, I would say there's a breakthrough recently where ASEAN ROK Cultural Heritage Corporation managed to kickstart after many, many years. And you can see that famous ASEAN handshake with the Koreans. I am glad to say that, there's crisis, there's always opportunity. And when you overcome that, it's like the sense of satisfaction is like very, very good. And there are so many platforms within the ASEAN and Korea fraternity that we can actually embark on doing a lot of cultural cooperation. Of course, I must put in that leadership thing. So our minister and our SecGen is very, very supportive in terms of doing more cultural exchange, increase more people-to-people exchange between Malaysia and Korea. And of course, riding the Look East policy waves, it's the 40th anniversary. But Jijangdo Matyo Myon Nada. So I like this Korean proverb because it's like, in cultural cooperation exchanges, we need to work together. And literally, I'm not sure it means like if we lift something together, even if it's a sheet of paper, it is much better. Yeah. So I'll end this part of my session at this. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Yo, for hitting the exact 10 minutes. So it's good to know that there is, always efforts on cultural diplomacy, despite how complicated this situation might be. And I think, of course, Korea has always been quite successful in terms of the export of its culture and the utilization of that export to influence its own soft power and interest, which is always a thing that ASEAN countries need to learn. So moving along now, I would like to pass the mic to our first discussant, Ms. Hizawati Atika.
Thank you, Dr. Noliana. So basically, it has been an interesting presentation from the three panelists today. So regarding just now, when Mr. Koh, in his slides, he mentioned about the unequal dynamics between South Korea and Malaysia people-to-people relations. You mentioned about the misconceptions about what Koreans have towards us. Like, for example, how they thought Malaysia is a conservative Muslim country, and then even Malaysia news presence about Malaysia in South Korea, which I agree actually, because the gap that I see that from there is actually language. So how do we tackle these language differences to bridge the gap within these two countries? Because like, for example, I used to study Korean language. So the conversations that we had with our Songsaenim at that time was like, there were two topics. So the first was about Islam. So before my Songsaenim came to Malaysia, so basically he Googled about Islam. So when he Googled about Islam, he was Googling in Korean. So when he Googled in Korean, so there were negative narratives from there. So he did a lot of readings about Islam in Korean. So the sources in the internet were quite negative, like most of them are negative. But when he Googled in English, it was like more towards the positive narratives or like neutral narratives. The same goes to Israel and Palestine issue as well. So when he Googled in Korean, he read a lot of like positive narratives about Israel. But when he read in English, so it's like a more balanced, and the narratives nowadays might be different because this is before the 7th October incident. So the same goes like Islam. So he was shocked when he came to Malaysia that Malaysia is different than what he read before this. So what I'm trying to say is that language can be one of the important keys for the growth of peace-to-peace relations. So my first question is to Dr. Kim. So how do we go about this? Like, do we need more Koreans to write about Malaysia more? Or do we get Malaysians to study Koreans more and contribute to this good narrative about Malaysia or even Southeast Asia countries? But if we use non-Koreans to write about this, do Koreans like it? Like, do they read it, or do Koreans prefer writings by Koreans for Koreans in Korean language? And my second question is that under Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and also President Yoon's administration, do you see there are positive chances or opportunities to work for better peace-to-peace relations, and in what way can we improve? So the next questions I have to either Mr. Ko or Dr. Christina. So like we can see nowadays that Korean soft power through cultural diplomacy is rising. And we have Hallyu, we have Korean YouTubers just now, we have everything K, K-tourism, K-food, K-drama. So basically now Korea is trying to attract more people from outside to consume their I would say culture. But when I look at ASEAN Korea Center data, the number of Malaysians in Korea is still considered quite low as compared to other countries in Southeast Asia. Like it can be in terms of tourism or in terms of work visa or students. So it's like Malaysians in Korea in 2022 is just like 9,528 Malaysians there. So it's just like 1.5%. As compared to countries like Vietnam and Thailand, they have like more than 200,000. Philippines and Indonesia, more than 50,000. Cambodia, 49,000. And even Singapore, which is smaller than us, has like 11,000. So the question is like, why Malaysians are not interested to study, travel, or work in Korea? And in what aspects can the Korean government or the Malaysian government can do to attract and encourage more exchanges between Malaysians and Koreans? So basically, what do we want Korean government to do, and what can we offer back to them? And to Dr. Yo, just now you showed about the Dakan, which is a blueprint from 2021 until 2025. So looking at Korea's perspective, what is the progress as of now? So is it like reaching the target, or is it still stagnant, or in what way can Dakan help to encourage more people-to-people exchanges between Malaysia and Korea? So that's all.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Zawati. Please go ahead, Dr. Gita.
Thank you, Dr. Nurliana. First of all, thank you to the organizers for inviting me to say a few words. The three papers, Mr. Ko, Dr. Kim, and Dr. Yo, I think the three papers are very different, but at the same time very innovative as well as very informative. Like in terms of Mr. Ko's paper, my expertise is international relations, so I don't know much about cultural dynamics. So the way you framed your presentation was very interesting to me. So if you ever write a paper on it, please do include a comparison between Korean YouTubers and Malaysian YouTubers, because there are a lot of Malaysian YouTubers. One that comes to mind is Durian Kimchi, right? Who also talk about Malaysian culture together with Korean culture. And the thing is, what is quite interesting in this people-to-people exchanges is at this point in time, because I think ROK Malaysia relations seems to be underpinned by Hallyu. Yeah, the craziness of Malaysians for Hallyu products, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but there are other ways in increasing, in advancing people-to-people exchanges, and one of it is, of course, education, because Malaysia wants to be an educational hub. It classifies itself as an educational hub. And in this context between ROK and Malaysia, what is quite interesting to me, because I deal with a lot of young Koreans, right? At the University of Malaya, we have a lot of exchanges. Korean students actually coming to Malaysian universities, and especially to the Faculty of Arts at the University of Malaya. And it is an eye-opener to them. to see Malaysia, firsthand, to experience Malaysian culture firsthand. And at the faculty, we also have a lot of cultural programs, promotion of Malaysian cultural programs for these kids. They are not only from South Korea, they're also from Japan and other countries, but increasingly, I think Korean universities, they want to internationalize, right? So one of the ways of internationalizing is to send their students overseas for exchange programs. This could be like 10 days, could be 1 month. We also have, longer periods of exchanges. So that's one. The other thing in terms of education is also, I find that a lot of Koreans are very interested, Korean parents are very interested in studying, in bringing their children to study in Malaysian schools. Malaysian schools could be local schools, especially Chinese schools, because they get to learn English, they get to learn Mandarin. And at the same time, those expats, Korean expats who live here, they put their children in international schools. And that is an advantage for Korean parents because, when the kids go back, they don't actually have to do the normal entrance exam to go to university, right? They get some sort of dispensation. Yeah, so these are ways and means to increase exchanges. But then I also agree with Mr. Koh, who says that a lot of these exchanges, especially the Korean diaspora, sometimes live in their own enclaves. They do not venture out. Yeah. So if a child is studying in an international school, it's going to be an international environment. It's not a Malaysian environment, unless a child is studying in a Chinese school in Kuala Lumpur or something, right? So I think we need to have concrete policies to how do I say, to promote, advance our culture, the multiculturalism, right? And Dr. Yeo, when I was looking at the National Cultural Policy, I'm so sorry, I've never seen it before because I'm not into culture, right? Cultural studies. And I was looking at all the features and all that, and it is so domestic oriented. It has nothing to do with how do we actually promote our culture overseas. So we can learn a lot from the Koreans because they have packaged their culture into products which are profitable, and we have multiculturalism, something that we can package and make money out of it, right? So I think these are the ways and means. And besides education, and of course we have things like Malaysia, my second home, and this and that. Oh, 5 more minutes. So I think, yes, it is an unequal relationship, people to people exchanges, but which relationship is balanced, right? So over time, for the moment, I think, of course, the balance of power is with the Koreans because of Hallyu. But I think there's a lot of things that we Malaysians can offer, like what was said just now, food and so on and so forth. And in terms of Dr. Kim's paper, I think you have actually given a very clear picture of decades-old ROK-Malaysia relations from the point of bilateral relations to a regionalism context. Yeah, thank you very much.
So we will end our session here today. Thank you so much to our speakers and to our discussants for a lively conversation. And I pass it back to Madam Farlina. Thank you.
Thank you, participants and panelists. That marks the end of the sessions in today's program. Moving to a closing ceremony, if it is possible for me to invite His Excellency Ambassador for his thoughts on the sessions today. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, all presenters and discussant, panelists, and all those who are in the floor to raise very important questions. And I enjoyed very much today. I particularly learned a lot from quite provoking questions and good and sometimes elusive answers. So those very substantive and informative the suggestions and advices I heard today, I will definitely share with our colleagues in Seoul, and those ideas and recommendations will be looked into carefully and seriously. The Korean embassy will continue engaging MASK network, the members and other experts, seeking advices to promote solidarity or cooperation between our two countries, and also seeking advices in addressing those global and regional challenges and disruptions our two countries are jointly facing. That regard, our embassy, together with the ISIS, will continue to provide the venue, this MASK network seminars, hopefully more frequently next year, with more the relevant, more meaningful topics. Having said that, I'd like to share the embassy's plan to deepen our partnership with ISIS next year through financial contribution and also more active participation. The MASK members, we would like to work together with you to make the coming 2024 another successful year for Korea, Malaysia, the relations. So thank you for all those people who are actively participate today, and I wish you all the good luck and good health the coming year. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We have now come to the end of the Malaysia Scholars on Korea program on solidarity amid disruptions. On behalf of ISIS Malaysia, thank you for joining us this morning. We wish to invite you for lunch at the ground floor of this building. Our secretariat is available to assist you with directions. Thank you.